Hello, Mandy back again. This time I am going to try the requested distress colouring tutorial. It isn't completely distressed. Sometimes I like to bring in some watercolour pencils on top of the distress inks when I use them as well. Start off, any questions I forget or anything that I forget to say or cover, just shout down in the info box and I will try and reply, and I'll put the details on the blog and you can contact me through that as well. Okay, so we'll start off with the paper I like to use. I think the best result you'll achieve with your colouring is based on the paper. Now, I am no watercolour expert. I don't know the proper official way to watercolour. I remember my art teacher in school telling me that my watercolouring was terrible, so I never kind of ventured into it until recently, and what I do is what I like and how I like to colour. It might be technically correct, but it's how I like to do my images. But I did find along the way that the paper makes an awful difference. So the better the paper, the more you spend on your paper, the better, not necessarily the more you spend, but if you'll find one that you like and that works. My preferred paper is the Langton. It's not cold press. There's different papers. There's hot press and cold press watercolour paper, and this is the cold press. It'll state on the front of them that it is a water paper. This is quite a large size. It's an A3. You can't really get it all into the camera. It was on offer the day that I bought it, so I decided to get it. I think this was about 16 euro, and I know that seems like quite a lot for paper, but when I stamp my image on this paper, because it's an A3, you can see, get it in there, you can see that I've only used a small amount of the paper. I've got a whole load of space there that I can stamp in another at least 8-9 images, so you do get good use of the paper. There is, I don't know how many sheets is in this pad, and it's £140 weight. Alright, this is the preferred paper. My second one is the Winsor Newton. Now, I only discovered this recently. Even though they both watercolour papers, there's 10 sheets in one and 12 sheets in the other, but there are both cold press paper. They're both the same weight. You can see that there. Get that in, Mandy, you're going the wrong way. Now, there we go. Okay, the very same. The only difference that I can see is that one is spiral bound and one is gum bound. But there is a difference in these papers. I don't know why. Maybe it's the pad I got, maybe it's wrong, but I've always bought the gummed. This wasn't in stock. So I bought the spiral thinking that it'd be the very same, and I started watercolouring and it's not. What did I just say? I just said I normally use the gummed. Sorry, correction. I need more coffee. I normally use the spiral bound one, and they hadn't got that, so I bought the gummed one. And it is not the same. I'm not getting the same blend when I use water with the distress inks on this paper as I do this paper. So I've reverted back to the old reliable. I've been trying to keep this pad for when I actually just do some paintings and use the smaller ones for stamping, but it doesn't matter, we're going to work on that. You can also get the Langton in smaller sizes as well. You don't have to go with that large size. Okay. There is also Dollar Rowney have watercolour postcards and watercolour pads as well. That is good paper too. Really nice, like that one. And the one that I detest and don't like, and no matter what I do with it, is the Tesco's watercolour. I saw this on offer in Tesco's, €2, $2.49, and thought this is going to be great, I'll give it a go. It is the worst paper I have worked on. I can't blend. It takes every medium quite badly, even watercolour paint, watercolour pencils, watercolour crayons, distress inks, and I don't know if I can show you on the camera. You can see it's kind of got like a honeycomb effect, which sometimes the pores and the texture is great, but I don't know what paper. so that's the paper covered. They're the papers that I have found, that I've bought and that I like. Okay, so the next thing you need for when you're watercolouring, because you're using water, you don't want the colour of your ink bleeding. So I normally use StazOn. And I have the black and the brown here, and I prefer to stamp in the timber brown. It's not a harsh line as when you use the black. Now the black is great and I've used it on stamped images, but if I want a more softer effect, especially if I'm stamping gorgeous girls, kind of more girly stamps, I prefer to use the brown. Okay, so that's the ink. You need to get that. That is a must really. If you don't have access to embossing powders and heat tools, which you could set with clear embossing powder, then that's fine. That'll stop your ink, any other pigment ink you have, from bleeding. But if you don't have access to those, you really would need to use a StazOn, especially with water. It doesn't bleed for you when you're doing your blending. Okay, so that's the inks. Next we have the brushes. Now I have two watercolour brushes here, and I also have a Winsor Newton size 4 watercolour brush. The watercolour brushes I absolutely love. These aren't the Koi water brush. I can't remember the brand of these ones. I think they're by Kuretake. But they have different size nibs on them. Mine are, can you see that? You put it against the white. Mine are used and abused. I don't like using these with the water in them for doing detail. If I'm colouring in a stamped image, I normally leave the water out, because I don't have, even when I squeeze it says push to release the water. I feel it releases still too much water for when I'm doing fine detail. If I'm doing a large area or a background, it's great. I'll use the water directly from the brush. But for smaller details, like colouring in hair and faces and details on clothes and stuff like that on your images, I prefer to use these without. I know you're wondering, why don't you just use an ordinary paintbrush? I could do, but these are what I have at hand, and I really like the tip, the point and the feel of the brushes. This one here has been played with by Sophie, so there's all the hairs are going in different directions, so I think I might have to retire that one and keep it for backgrounds and not use it on detail. But normally I work with this brush here. Okay, and I have smaller ones for much finer detail, but I find this one covers hair, face, small details that have to be coloured in. Next, what I always find to go in and pick out detail that might have been lost while you're colouring is, oh god, where did I throw them? Is the Pitt water pens by Faber-Castell. These are waterproof pens. Can you see those there? So if I want to go in and pick out detail of eyes that have gotten lost under all the colour I've laid down, I will use these, because if I want to go back in and blend over again and put more colour and more water, these won't bleed. They're an artist grade pen. They're available in black, browns, you can get them in multicolour packs, different sizes as well. There's fine nib, there's medium nib. These are the ones I prefer to work with for picking out detail, because sometimes I'll pick out some detail and I'll want to go in and put more colour in, and if I've used a pen that's not waterproof, I can't do that because it'll bleed all over the place. So that part, that idea. So I always have these two on hand, okay, and a white ball pen as well. This is the Uniball Signo, the broad one. For the broad one to the thin one, the colour actually comes out better. I find with the thinner one that sometimes it stops and starts and it takes a while to get it going. So I use this if I want to pick out some highlights too. Alright. And then last but not least is the medium we're going to use. As I said, I like to use my Distress Inks by Tim Holtz from Ranger. Okay. I have built up a pretty decent collection of colours now at this stage. So these are what I prefer to work with, and I'm absolutely dying for the markers to come out, because it'll cut out the water brush, any of the messing around I do with any of the other colours, and I won't waste as much by putting this colour out on the block, which I use because I use it as a palette. So this is the acrylic block. I lay down my colour from my Distress Ink onto my block, and I use that like a palette and lift the colour with my brush and paint in my image. So I'm hoping that when the distress markers come out, it'll cut out that stage. I don't know if I'm going to miss doing this. We'll find out. So hopefully I'll be able to get my paws on some when they hit the market. Yeah, so that's the inks. In conjunction with the inks, I like to use the Caran d'Ache. It depends on what kind of accent you have, the way you say it. These are water soluble crayons. Okay, this is just 4 of the colours I have. I have the range there as well. I'll show you now. I'll just stretch up and get it. Okay, this is my pot. So if I have a colour, or if I want to use a colour that I can't find the shade in the distress ink, I will pull these in and I will use them over it. You can mix your mediums together and you can layer up your colours and create different effects. I also like to use my Intense watercolour pencils. Again, I will pick out small details. I will go in over colour I've already laid down either with the crayons or the distress inks, and I will change the colour or intensify it. I prefer to use the Derwent Intense as opposed to my Caran d'Ache or my Faber-Castell watercolour pencils. Here. Even though the Caran d'Ache watercolour pencils are the same brand as the crayons, you'd assume they'd work the same way, but they seem to resist. It's obviously something in the distress inks. When you have them down, there's the ingredients or whatever, they resist like a bit of an oil and water effect, so you don't get the intense colour. You get intense colour if you use these on their own, but they're not great for layering. The Intense will layer over any of the distress colour I find, or the crayons, but not the Caran d'Ache watercolour pencils. Okay, the Faber-Castell ones I'm not crazy about. I think this was the set I first bought. The pigmentation of the pencils is not great. For small little areas and stuff like that, or when Sophie wants to craft with me and watercolour, I let her play with these. I don't really use them anymore, but they're great if I want to do just an art journal page with just these. If I work with just these, they're fine. I get a nice subtle effect, but for intense colour I most definitely prefer to use the Intense, and I hope to build up a bit more of a colour range. If you can get them when they're on offer, you can normally find them buy one get one free, or buy two get one free, or something along those lines. Each shop does different offers, so I try and wait until they're on and pick maybe 1 or 2 up a week. That's how I've built up most of my collection of any colours. I haven't gone out and bought the whole lot in one go. I've picked up 1 or 2 whenever I've had some cash left in the wallet at the end of the week, which very rarely happens. But anyway, we put up a post on Facebook the other week asking red, brunette or blonde hair, and most of the votes came in favour of red hair. It wasn't my hair I was dyeing. I was looking for a colour so I could paint in one of the gorgeous girls. I wanted to know what hair colour to do for the first video. So red won, so I'm going to do a red colouring tutorial on a gorgeous girl stamped image, and hopefully it works and you enjoy it. I will also put up a separate video of doing the skin, the dresses and backgrounds, so hopefully there'll be a series there. Okay.